The smell hit Tommy first. Metal and waste and something else he couldn't name. Fear, maybe. His cage barely gave him room to sit up straight, and the cold bars pressed against his back no matter how he tried to curl away from them. 7 years old was too young to understand why pirates had taken him from the colony transport. Too young to know what markets wanted with human children, but old enough to know he wanted his mom. Through the dim lighting of the holding area, dozens of cages lined the walls. Things moved inside them. Things that chirped and growled and made sounds that hurt his ears. The Grellians who ran this place walked past twice a day with food pellets that tasted like cardboard. They were tall, gray-skinned beings with forearms and faces that showed no expression Tommy could read. They never spoke to him, just shoved the pellets through the bars and moved on. One cage over, something watched him. Tommy had noticed it the first night when his crying wouldn't stop. Yellow eyes in the darkness, reflecting what little light existed down here. The creature was low to the ground, stocky, with gray and white fur that looked rough. It never made noise, just watched. The Grellians seemed afraid of it. They gave that cage extra space when they walked past. One had called it a mustelid from the Forbidden Planet. Tommy didn't know what that meant, but he knew the creature never looked away from him. Not when he cried, not when he slept, not when the Grellians came. Days blended together in the holding area. Tommy counted them by sleep cycles, but even that got confused. Was it 10 days? 20? He tried to remember his dad's face and felt panic when the memory seemed fuzzy. His mom's voice singing him to sleep. That was fading too. The only constant was the creature in the next cage, always watching with those yellow eyes. Then Voss came. Tommy had seen him before, walking through with a long metal rod that crackled with blue energy. The other Grellians moved aside for Voss. Even the creatures in cages went quiet when he passed. Voss was bigger than the others, with scars across his gray skin and something mean in the way he moved. The rod in his hands made a sound like angry insects. Tonight, Voss stopped at Tommy's cage. The other Grellians kept walking, disappearing through the far door. Tommy pressed himself against the back bars, making himself as small as possible. Voss leaned down, his face close enough that Tommy could see the pattern of scales on his skin. "Crying again, human spawn?" The words came out harsh and clipped. "Your kind makes too much noise. Buyers want quiet merchandise." Tommy tried to stop the sob in his throat, but it came out anyway, small and broken. He hated the sound of it, hated being this scared. Voss's forearms moved, two reaching for the cage lock while the other two raised the shock rod. Blue energy danced along its length. "Time you learned silence." The lock clicked open. The cage door swung wide. Tommy scrambled backward, but there was nowhere to go. The rod came closer, crackling with voltage that made his hair stand up. Voss's face showed something now, satisfaction, enjoyment. Then the world exploded with sound. Metal screamed as bars bent. The cage beside Tommy's front section simply tore away, and the creature launched itself across the gap. Tommy saw it clearly for the first time in the harsh blue light of the shock rod. Compact body rippling with muscle under thick fur. Claws like curved knives. A face that seemed too small for the fury it carried. Voss barely had time to turn. The creature hit him low and hard, going for the legs holding the shock rod. Voss stumbled backward with a sound that might have been surprise. He swung the rod down and blue energy engulfed the creature's body. It should have stopped the attack, should have sent the animal convulsing to the floor. The creature didn't even slow down. It climbed Voss like he was a tree, claws finding purchase in gray skin, jaws snapping at anything in reach. The shock rod fell as Voss used all four arms to try pulling the animal off. Blood started showing dark against gray skin. The creature made its first sound then, not a roar or a howl, something worse. A churning, raging snarl that spoke of endless fight and zero quit. Other cages erupted with noise, howls and shrieks and calls that bounced off metal walls. Alarms started blaring somewhere above. Voss managed to throw the creature off, but it landed on all fours and immediately charged again. This time Voss ran, stumbling toward the door while the creature pursued. Blood marked his path. Then it stopped, right at the threshold where Voss had disappeared. It turned and looked back at Tommy, still frozen in his open cage. Yellow eyes met his. The creature's sides heaved with breath. Blood matted its fur, some of it clearly its own. Burns from the shock rod marked its skin. It walked back, not rushed, deliberate. It stopped at Tommy's cage and looked at him for a long moment. Then it turned to the side bars and started pulling. The metal groaned. These bars weren't made to hold something with this much determination. They bent slowly until there was a gap just wide enough. The creature looked at Tommy again and made a soft, huffing sound. Then it moved toward an air vent set low in the wall. It looked back once more, waiting. Tommy understood. He crawled out of the cage on shaking legs and followed those yellow eyes toward whatever came next. The vent shaft was barely wide enough for Tommy to squeeze through. His elbows scraped against metal as he crawled, following the creature ahead of him. Behind them, the alarms got louder. Voices shouted in languages Tommy didn't understand. The creature kept moving, seeming to know exactly where it was going. They emerged into a maintenance corridor lined with pipes that hissed steam at random intervals. The creature dropped down first, landing with barely a sound despite its stocky build. Tommy hung from the vent opening, his arms shaking before letting go. He hit the floor hard and felt the impact in his knees. The creature waited, watching him with those patient yellow eyes. Footsteps echoed from somewhere nearby, heavy boots on metal grating. The creature's head swiveled toward the sound, then back to Tommy. It moved to a gap between two large pipes and looked at him expectantly. Tommy scrambled to follow, wedging himself into the tight space. The creature pressed in beside him, its warm body solid against his side. 3 Grellian security guards ran past, their boots clanging. They carried nets and more of those shock rods. Tommy held his breath until the sounds faded. The creature stayed perfectly still, only its eyes moving to track the threat. When silence returned, the creature eased out of the hiding spot. It limped now. Tommy noticed the burns across its back where Voss's shock rod had hit. Dark blood matted the fur on one side. But the creature didn't stop moving. It led Tommy deeper into the maintenance areas, away from the main corridors where security would search. They found a small alcove behind a water processing unit. The creature finally stopped, its legs seeming to give out as it settled onto the floor. Its breathing came heavy and labored. Tommy knelt beside it. Unsure what to do, the creature had saved him, had fought something 3 times its size without hesitation, and now it was hurt because of him. His dad's voice came back to him then, clearer than it had been in weeks. Pressure stops bleeding. Clean wounds prevent infection. Basic first aid every colony kid learned in case of emergency. Tommy looked around the alcove and spotted a supply locker built into the wall. He tried the handle and it opened, revealing maintenance supplies, medical packs for the workers. Tommy grabbed one. The creature watched him as he returned, but didn't move away when Tommy opened the medical pack. His hands shook as he pulled out the antiseptic wipes. The creature's eyes followed his movements, sharp and alert despite the pain it had to be feeling. "I'm going to help," Tommy whispered, "like you helped me." He started with the burns, gently cleaning away blood and dirt. The creature flinched but didn't pull away, didn't snap or growl. Just let this small human tend to wounds it couldn't reach. Tommy worked carefully, the way his mom had shown him when he'd scraped his knee on the transport ship, the way his dad had taught him to be thorough, to not rush when something mattered. The medical pack had bandages designed for Grellian workers, but Tommy made them work. He wrapped the worst burns and the deep claw marks where Voss had managed to land hits. The creature stayed still through all of it, only its eyes moving to watch Tommy's face. When he finished, Tommy sat back against the wall. Exhaustion hit him all at once. His hands were shaking again and tears burned at his eyes. Everything that had happened crashed down on him. The fear, the confusion, the desperate hope that maybe he'd see his family again. The creature shifted closer and Tommy felt its warm bulk against his side. Solid, real, present. "My name is Tommy," he said quietly. "I don't know what you are, but thank you." The creature made a low huffing sound, not aggressive, almost gentle. Tommy reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and touched the top of its head. The fur was coarser than he expected, thick and dense. The creature leaned into the touch slightly. They sat like that for a while, two beings from the same planet finding each other light years from home. Tommy's breathing steadied. The creatures did too. Outside their hiding place, the station's sounds continued. The hum of life support. The distant clang of machinery. Announcements in alien languages over speakers. Then footsteps again, but different this time. Lighter. A single person moving through the maintenance area. The creature's head came up, ears forward. Tommy froze. The footsteps stopped near their alcove. "I know you're in there." The voice was female and spoke in rough but understandable human standard. "I'm not security. My name is Rella. I saw what happened in the holding area." The creature growled low in its throat. Tommy felt the vibration through his whole body. "The station commander has posted bounties on you both," Rella continued. "Every hunter and mercenary on Volter Station is looking for a human child and an Earth mustelid. But I know what you are. I've studied Earth's catalog. That's a honey badger with you, isn't it?" Tommy didn't respond, didn't know if he should. Rella's voice dropped lower. "Earth is a death world. I've read the reports. The galaxy doesn't understand what comes from places like that. They think small means weak. They don't know about species that evolve to never give up, never back down. I'm going to help you, but you have to trust me." The creature, the honey badger, stopped growling. It stared at the gap where Rella's voice came from. Tommy felt his heart hammering. Trust was dangerous, but staying here was impossible. Security would find them eventually. "There's a transport in Dock Bay 7, Rella said. "Leaves in 6 hours. I can get you there, but we have to move now." Tommy looked at the badger. It looked back at him. Somehow in that exchange of glances, a decision was made. Tommy stood up, his legs still shaky. The badger rose too, favoring its injured side, but steady enough. They stepped out of the alcove together. Rella was smaller than the Grellians, with blue-tinted skin and large eyes that caught the dim light. She wore maintenance worker coveralls and carried a tool bag that looked worn from use. When she saw Tommy and the badger emerge, something like relief crossed her face. "You look terrible," she said, looking at Tommy. Then her gaze dropped to the badger. "Both of you do. How bad are the injuries?" Tommy opened his mouth to answer, but the badger moved between him and Rella, a clear warning. Rella raised her hands slowly, showing empty palms. "I understand you don't know me, but I promise I'm trying to help." She reached into her bag carefully and pulled out a water container and some kind of wrapped food. "For the human, I didn't know what honey badgers eat." "Anything," Tommy said quietly. "My dad told me about them once. They eat anything they can catch or find." Rella smiled at that. "Sounds about right for an Earth species." She set the items down and stepped back. "We need to move soon. Security is doing deck-by-deck sweeps. The commander is taking this personally." The badger sniffed the air, then moved forward to investigate the food Rella had left. Tommy followed, grabbing the water container. His throat was so dry it hurt. He drank carefully while the badger tore into the wrapped food with single-minded focus. It was some kind of protein bar, and the badger demolished it in seconds. "The transport in Dock Bay 7, Tommy said. "Where does it go?" "Trade route that passes through human-controlled space." Rella checked a small device on her wrist. "But getting there is the problem. The main corridors are being watched. We'll have to go through the service tunnels. They're tight, dirty, and if we run into a maintenance crew, I can't protect you." The badger finished eating and moved back to Tommy's side. It looked better with food in its stomach, though the limp was still visible. Tommy felt the creature's presence like an anchor. As long as it was with him, he felt like maybe they could make it. "How do you know about Earth?" Tommy asked as Rella led them down a narrow passage. "Most aliens we met didn't care where humans came from." "I study xenobiology," Rella said over her shoulder. "Particularly species from high-gravity, high-danger worlds. Earth fascinates me. So much variety, so much adaptation. When I heard about a honey badger being brought to the station, I tried to get it released. But the Grellians claimed salvage rights." They reached a junction where 3 tunnels met. Rella consulted her device again, then chose the left path. The badger went first, its low profile perfect for the cramped space. Tommy followed, with Rella bringing up the rear. "What salvage rights?" Tommy asked. "It means they claimed you and the Badger were found on a derelict ship. No survivors, no one to contest ownership." Rella's voice carried disgust. "Pirates sell captures to the Grellians. The Grellians file paperwork claiming salvage, clean and legal as far as station records show." Tommy felt sick. His parents were out there somewhere, probably thinking he was dead, and all because of paperwork. The tunnel opened into a larger space, some kind of equipment room filled with humming machinery. The Badger stopped suddenly, its whole body going tense. Tommy froze too. He'd learned to trust the Badger's instincts. Voices echoed from somewhere ahead, multiple beings moving through the equipment room. The Badger backed up, pressing against Tommy's legs. Rella touched his shoulder and pointed to a gap between two machines. They squeezed into the hiding spot just as 3 bounty hunters entered the room. They weren't Grellian. 2 were covered in scales, walking upright on powerful legs. The third had too many joints in its arms and carried a weapon that crackled with energy. They moved with purpose, checking behind equipment, scanning for heat signatures. The Badger's growl was so low Tommy felt it more than heard it. He put his hand on the creature's back, a silent plea for silence. The Badger's muscles were coiled tight, ready to explode into action, but it stayed still, waiting. One of the scaled hunters stopped near their hiding place. Its head swiveled, tongue flicking out to taste the air. Tommy held his breath. His heart hammered so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. The hunter's eyes swept right past their gap. Then it moved on, following its companions toward the far exit. They waited in silence until the sounds faded completely. Rella let out a breath she'd been holding. "That was close. They're using scent trackers. We need to move faster." The next section of tunnel was partially flooded. Water sloshed around their ankles, cold and smelling of chemicals. The Badger waded through without hesitation, and Tommy followed. His shoes were already ruined, so it didn't matter. Rella kept checking her device, guiding them through the maze of passages. They passed other workers once, a crew doing repairs on a power conduit. Rella waved casually, and the workers barely glanced at them. Just another maintenance team dealing with problems in the guts of the station. The Badger stayed low and quiet, hidden behind Tommy's legs. Finally, they reached a vertical shaft with a ladder bolted to the wall. Rella pointed up. "Dock Bay 7 is 3 levels above us. The transport is called the Swift Current. Captain is a friend of mine. She doesn't ask questions about passengers if the price is right." Tommy looked at the ladder, then at the Badger. How is he going to climb that? The Badger was already moving. It gripped the ladder rungs with its claws and started climbing with the same determination it brought to everything else. Awkward, maybe, but effective. Tommy watched in amazement as the creature hauled itself up rung by rung, refusing to let injury or anatomy stop it. "Earth species," Rella said with something like wonder in her voice. "They just don't quit, do they?" Tommy started climbing. "No," he said, "they really don't." They emerged into a storage area behind Dock Bay 7. Crates stacked 3 high created a maze of paths leading toward the docking port itself. The Badger shook itself after the climb, water from the flooded tunnel spraying in all directions. Tommy was soaked too, shivering in the cooler air of the upper levels. Rella checked around a corner, then motioned them forward. "The Swift Current is docked at Port 7 Delta. Captain Owen knows to expect passengers, but she doesn't know what kind. Stay quiet and let me do the talking." They moved between the crates, the Badger's claws clicking softly on the deck plating. Ahead, Tommy could see the dock itself, a wide bay with ships of various sizes attached to airlocks. Workers moved cargo on hover sleds, their attention focused on their tasks. Normal station business continuing around them. Then alarms started blaring, not the general alert from before, but something sharper, more urgent. Red lights began flashing along the walls. Workers stopped what they were doing, looking around in confusion. An announcement crackled over the speakers in multiple languages. Tommy only understood the human standard version. "Security alert. All dock bays are now in lockdown. No ships may depart until fugitives are apprehended." All personnel report suspicious activity immediately. Rella cursed in her own language. They've locked down the whole station. Drax must have figured out we were heading for the docks. Who's Drax? Tommy asked, though part of him didn't want to know. Station commander, former military, he doesn't like losing valuable cargo. Rella pulled them deeper into the crate maze. We need a new plan. The Badger's attention had fixed on something across the dock. Tommy followed its gaze and saw them. Security teams were entering from multiple access points, spreading out to cover the bay. They carried heavy equipment, nets that sparked with energy and those shock rods, but leading them was someone different. Drax was taller than the other Grellians, with military bearing and scars that spoke of real combat experience. He wore armor instead of the standard security uniform, and he carried a shock rod that looked custom-made, larger and more powerful than the others. His 4 eyes swept the dock with calculated precision. The human child and the Earth mustelid are here, Drax's voice carried across the bay, amplified somehow. All exits are sealed, all ships are grounded, there is no escape. Surrender now and the punishment will be minimal. The Badger growled, and Tommy felt the sound through the crate they were pressed against. Rella was frantically typing on her device, trying to find a way out that didn't exist. They were trapped. Drax started moving between the crates with his security team, systematically checking each hiding spot. Other teams were doing the same from different directions. The net was closing. Tommy's mind raced, trying to think of something, anything his parents had taught him that could help. Then he remembered his dad showing him station schematics once. Emergency protocols. Every dock bay had emergency vents in case of atmospheric breach. They'd open automatically if pressure dropped too fast, but they could also be triggered manually from control panels positioned around the bay for safety inspections. Tommy spotted one of the panels attached to a support pillar 20 meters away, but getting there meant crossing open space where security could see them. The Badger seemed to sense his thoughts, following his gaze to the panel. Those yellow eyes looked back at Tommy, and something passed between them. Understanding. Agreement. I have an idea, Tommy whispered to Rella, but it's going to get loud. Before Rella could respond, the Badger launched itself from cover. It ran straight toward the nearest security team, not with the desperation of fleeing prey, but with the focused aggression of an apex predator on the hunt. The team barely had time to react before the Badger was among them, all teeth and claws and unstoppable fury. The distraction was perfect. Security teams converged on the Badger, shouting and trying to net the creature that moved too fast and hit too hard. Drax bellowed orders, redirecting his forces. In the chaos, Tommy ran for the control panel. His wet shoes slipped on the deck plating, but he kept moving. Rella ran beside him, her eyes wide with shock at the Badger's sacrifice. Tommy reached the panel and yanked it open. The controls were labeled in multiple languages, and he found the one he needed: emergency vent activation. His finger hovered over the button. This would trigger station-wide alarms, bring every security team running, and drop the atmospheric pressure in the bay enough to activate automatic safety protocols, including unsealing the lockdown to allow emergency evacuation. He pressed it. Sirens wailed. The deck shuddered as massive vents opened in the bay ceiling. Air began rushing out in a controlled release, not enough to cause harm, but enough to trigger every safety system. Ships started their emergency departure protocols automatically. The Swift Current's engines began powering up. Through the chaos, Tommy saw the Badger. It was surrounded by security teams, tangled in nets, shock rods pressing against its body. But it was still fighting, still refusing to quit. Drax stood over it, his custom shock rod raised for a finishing blow. Tommy ran, didn't think, just ran. Rella shouted after him, but he didn't stop. He couldn't let the Badger die, not after everything, not when it had saved him without hesitation. He was 10 meters away when Drax noticed him. 5 meters when the commander's eyes widened in recognition. 3 meters when Drax's shock rod swung toward him instead. The Badger, even pinned under nets and weakened by repeated shocks, found the strength to lunge one more time. Its jaws closed on the shock rod, wrenching it from Drax's grip. The weapon skittered across the deck. Tommy dove for it, his small hands closing around the handle. It was heavy, designed for four-armed Grellians, but he managed to lift it. He pointed it at Drax, and for the first time the station commander stepped back. The shock rod trembled in Tommy's hands. Every security guard in the bay had stopped moving, their attention locked on the small human child pointing a weapon at their commander. Drax's four eyes narrowed, calculating. His scarred face showed no fear, only cold assessment of the situation. "Put that down, human spawn," Drax said quietly. His voice carried an edge that made Tommy's stomach clench. "You don't know how to use it, you'll hurt yourself." Tommy's arms ached from holding the heavy rod steady, but he didn't lower it. Behind Drax, the badger was still trapped. Under the nets, its sides heaving with exhaustion. Blood matted its fur. Burns covered its skin where the shock rods had hit again and again, but those yellow eyes were still alert, still watching. "Let him go," Tommy said. His voice came out smaller than he wanted, but it didn't shake. "Let us both go." Drax took a step forward. "That creature is dangerous. It attacked my crew, damaged station property. It belongs in a containment cell or sold to a facility that can handle it properly." "He saved me." Tommy's grip tightened on the rod. "When your people were going to hurt me, he fought them. He got hurt protecting me. That's not dangerous. That's what family does." Something flickered across Drax's face. Confusion, maybe. The concept seemed foreign to him. He took another step forward, and Tommy activated the shock rod. Blue energy crackled along its length, the sound angry and sharp in the sudden silence of the bay. "I said stop." Tommy's hands were shaking now, but the rod stayed pointed at Drax. "I know how to use it. Point and push the button. My dad taught me about weapons. Simple ones work the best." Drax paused. For the first time, uncertainty showed in his posture. Behind him, his security teams watched, waiting for orders. The emergency sirens continued wailing. Ships in the bay were still in automated departure protocols, their engines humming with building power. The Swift Current's boarding ramp had extended, Rella standing at the top and gesturing frantically. Then new alarms joined the cacophony. Different tones, urgent and sharp, warning klaxons that made even Drax turn to look at the bay's main entrance. Tommy heard it too. The unmistakable sound of military-grade engines powering down, not traders or merchants, something bigger. The bay's main airlock opened, and soldiers poured through. They wore armor painted in Earth's colors, blue and white and green, human soldiers moving with practiced precision. Behind them came others, alien species that served in humanity's combined forces. They spread out across the bay, weapons ready, establishing a perimeter. A woman walked through the center of the formation, her uniform marking her as a captain. She was dark-skinned with gray showing in her short hair, and she moved like someone who'd spent decades in command. Her eyes swept the bay, taking in the scene. Tommy with the shock rod, Drax and his security teams, the Badger trapped under. Nets, she strode forward, and Drax's security teams parted to let her through. "I'm Captain Rodriguez of the Earth Alliance Defense Force," she announced, her voice carrying authority that made even Drax straighten. "We received a distress beacon from this station. A human child was reported missing under suspicious circumstances." Drax recovered quickly. "Captain, you're interfering with internal station security matters. That human and the animal with him are fugitives. They've damaged property and injured personnel." Rodriguez stopped in front of Drax, and though he was taller, she somehow seemed to look down at him. "The child appears to be defending himself, and that animal is a honey badger from Earth, protected under Earth species sovereignty laws." Her gaze moved to Tommy, and her expression softened slightly. "Son, you can lower the weapon. You're safe now." Tommy wanted to believe her, wanted to drop the heavy rod and cry and let someone else handle everything. But he looked at the badger, still trapped and bleeding. Not until he's free, not until they promise to leave him alone. Rodriguez followed his gaze to the badger. Something like respect crossed her face. She turned back to Drax. "Commander, I'm ordering you to release that animal immediately. It falls under Earth's jurisdiction as a protected species. It's dangerous, Drax protested. It attacked my crew. It defended a human child from what appears to be abuse. Rodriguez's voice went cold. I've reviewed the station logs. The child was held in animal containment, subjected to conditions no sentient being should endure. The honey badger acted appropriately given the threat level. Drax's jaw worked, but he gave a sharp gesture to his security team. They began removing the nets, cautious and slow. The badger didn't move as they worked, conserving its strength. When the last net fell away, it stood on shaking legs and limped toward Tommy. Tommy dropped the shock rod and fell to his knees, wrapping his arms around the badger's thick neck. The creature's fur was rough against his face, and it smelled of blood and sweat and survival. But it was warm and solid and alive. The badger made that soft, huffing sound, and Tommy felt tears finally break free. Rodriguez knelt beside them. "What's your name, son?" "Tommy," his voice muffled against the badger's fur. "Tommy Chen, my parents were on the colony transport Prosperity, pirates. Attacked us. We've been searching for you for 3 months, Rodriguez said gently. Your parents never stopped hoping. We tracked the pirates here to this station, found evidence of illegal trafficking operations. She looked at Drax. Operations that are about to be shut down permanently. Military personnel were already moving through the bay, securing areas and taking custody of Drax's security teams. Rella stood near the swift current, relief evident on her face. Rodriguez called over a medic, who approached carefully with supplies for the badger. "Will he be okay?" Tommy asked, watching the medic work. Rodriguez smiled. "Honey badgers are survivors, toughest animals pound for pound on Earth. He'll need rest and treatment, but he'll make it." She paused. "You both will." 6 months passed like a dream Tommy kept expecting to wake from. The military transport that carried them away from Volter Station had been clean and safe, and everything the holding pens hadn't been. The badger rode in the medical bay, sedated while doctors treated burns and cuts and exhaustion. Tommy stayed nearby, sleeping on a cot the crew set up for him. When the badger woke 3 days later, the first thing it did was look for Tommy. The reunion with his parents happened at a way station 2 weeks into the journey. Tommy saw them running down the landing bay and forgot he was trying to be brave. He ran too, and the collision of the 3 of them nearly knocked his mother over. His dad's face was wet, and his mom was saying his name over and over like she'd forgotten any other words. The badger watched from a safe distance, still bandaged but steady on its feet. His mother noticed it first. "Tommy, what is that?" "That's Badger," Tommy said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "He saved me. Can we keep him?" His parents looked at each other in that way adults do when they're trying to figure out how to explain complicated things. But Captain Rodriguez was there too, and she told them everything. What Tommy had endured, what the badger had done, how neither had quit even when any reasonable being would have given up. His father knelt to look at the badger properly. The creature watched him with those yellow eyes, calm but alert. "Honey badgers are illegal to keep as pets in most human territories," his dad said carefully. "They're wild animals." "I know," Tommy said, "but he's not a pet, he's family." Rodriguez cleared her throat. "There's actually a provision in Earth law for cases like this. Wild animals that form protective bonds with humans during life-threatening situations can be granted special status. It's rare, but it happens. Usually with rescue dogs, sometimes with other species. The animal is free to leave at any time, but if it chooses to stay, accommodations must be made." The badger could have left. When they finally reached the colony world where Tommy's family had been relocated, there was wilderness nearby. Real Earth wilderness, transplanted ecosystems where honey badgers would thrive. Rodriguez herself walked the badger to the edge of the settlement and opened the carrier. The badger stepped out, tested the air, and looked at the forest stretching away into the distance. Then it turned around and walked back toward the colony, toward Tommy's new house. It stopped at the door and waited until someone let it in. The colony adapted. At first, people were nervous about a honey badger living among them, especially near children. But the badger never showed aggression to anyone who didn't threaten Tommy. It ignored most people entirely, content to follow Tommy to school, wait outside during classes, and walk him home. At night, it slept at the foot of Tommy's bed, a silent guardian that never quite relaxed. The story spread, not just through the colony, but beyond. The footage from Volter Station had been reviewed by Earth authorities investigating the trafficking operation. Someone leaked it to public networks. Within weeks, billions of beings across the galaxy had seen a honey badger fighting security teams to protect a human child. Had seen that same honey badger refuse to stay down no matter how many times it was shocked or beaten or netted. Alien attitudes toward Earth began to shift. The humans themselves were formidable, that much the galaxy had accepted. But this was different. This showed that Earth's other species shared that same unstoppable nature. A small mustelid weighing maybe 15 kilograms had gone through trained security forces like they were nothing. And it had done it not for food or territory, but for a bond that transcended species. Scientists requested to study the badger, offering enormous sums. Tommy's parents always declined. Reporters wanted interviews, and Tommy gave a few, always with the badger sitting beside him, usually sleeping. The questions were always the same. Why did it save you? How did you know you could trust it? What makes Earth animals so different? Tommy's answers were simple. He saved me because I needed saving. I trusted him because he showed me I could. Earth animals aren't different. They're just honest about what they are. A year after Volter Station, Tommy turned 9. His birthday party was small, just family and a few colony friends. The badger spent most of it sleeping in a sunny spot by the window, occasionally opening one eye to check on Tommy. When the guests left and his parents cleaned up, Tommy sat beside the badger and scratched behind its ears. "Thanks for staying," he said quietly. The badger made that soft, huffing sound, the one that meant contentment. Its eyes opened, yellow and bright, and looked at Tommy with something that might have been understanding, might have been affection, definitely was acceptance. That night, Tommy's mother came to check on him before bed. She found him asleep with a book about Earth animals open on his chest. The badger was in its usual spot at the foot of the bed, awake and watchful. She started to leave, then paused. "Thank you," she whispered to the badger, "for bringing him back to us." The badger's eyes followed her to the door. When she left, its attention returned to Tommy, to the steady rise and fall of the child's breathing. Outside, the colony was quiet. Ships occasionally passed overhead, heading to other worlds. The galaxy continued its vast and complicated business, full of thousands of species trying to find their place among the stars. But in this room on this world, things were simple. A human child slept safely because an Earth creature had decided he was worth protecting. That decision, made in a dark holding pen on a distant station, had changed both their lives. The badger didn't understand concepts like heroism or sacrifice. Didn't need to. It had seen a child in danger and acted according to its nature. Earth nature, unstoppable, fierce, and absolutely unwilling to abandon its own. The galaxy was still learning what that meant. Tommy and the badger already knew. They'd learned it together in the worst circumstances possible, and the bond forged there would last the rest of their lives. The badger closed its eyes, but only for a moment. Always watchful, always ready, always there.